still muted. What is going on? All right. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Sorry about that first 40 seconds of muted silence for no good reason. I'm glad that all of you are here today. I'm sorry that I'm an idiot. It's a regular occurrence around here. I just changed up my whole setup, so I think that's why the mic disconnected and unmuted. Yep, boomer. It's all good. I literally pressed this button, mutes it, and I unmuted it, but I just reconnected it, so it I guess mutes it when it restarts. All right, guys. Just a yank to fuck it up. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. I hope everybody's doing good today. I'm going to go retweet my thing real fast, and then we will get right into it. I hope everybody is doing good today. It is what? Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. So 2 days worth of updates, 48 hours worth of map updates that we got to go over. We've got some stuff to talk about. Not very many news articles. Everybody's pretty much obsessed with the Kursk situation, so that's still going on. Let's see. How many? For those of you who don't know, I scheduled the live stream at a different time today because I got a dryer delivered to my house. So that's the funny joke there. Bro, you're huge. Your head seems small. Thank you. I think I have a big head too. Hello from Belgium. Let's go. Let's see. I saw this post. Alexander Mercurius mentioned you today. Congratulations. I guess you can expect you at the Duran very soon. I really do hope so. I really would love to go on and have a conversation with them. I've talked to them. I've been on a podcast with them before, and they're great guys. So yeah, I would love to go on there and talk. That's awesome that I got mentioned. Glad my work is making waves all over the place. All right. I also have a big head. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. This is episode number 82 of Kalibrated Live. If you guys want to find more of my work, if you don't already, please go follow me on Telegram and Twitter. You can find a lot of updates there. I give a lot of opinions on Telegram and everything. So go follow me there. You can find those links in the description of this YouTube video. If you guys would like to support me financially, the easiest way you can do that is through super chats, where you can ask questions and I will answer them on stream. Or you guys can go to my Patreon, and I have content that I upload there. If you donate or if you become a Patreon member, whether you're free or paying, you get access to the content. If you do support my work, you will get access to that content a little earlier. The new demonetized, I've been putting it together. It's going to be like an hour and a half. There's so much content, so much like combat footage coming out from Kursk region and actually all over the place. The Russians have kind of been dumping a lot of, combat footage and stuff out. So it's going to be a long one. I'm thinking that I'm going to do something different. I'm going to invite somebody on, and it's going to be a demonetized episode. So if you guys are interested in that, please go join the Patreon. You can join for free, and you will get access to all that content free eventually. All right. Other than that, guys, please go like and subscribe and leave a comment. Ask a question underneath the video, and I'll get to some of them for sure. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and start with the map updates, everybody. We have a couple to talk about. So just to start off on the Kursk region. Kursk, just like Volochansk for me, I'm going to update these very, very slowly. I haven't really done anything in here for a very long time. Not that there has been very many changes. Sometimes the Russians capture a block or something like that. But I really just don't update this unless it's like a big update, like the Ukrainians took back this area. So I gave that back to them and stuff like that. But just like the Volochansk, Kharkov incursion by the Russians, the Kursk incursion is even more unknown. There's a lot of unknowns with this this area right now. There's a lot of light infantry, a lot of DRGs, which are deep reconnaissance groups, that are working up into these other towns. If you saw Zelensky's speech today, he claimed that the Ukrainians have captured 74 villages in the Kursk region. Realistically, Weeb Union actually commented this on my post, that it is actually somewhere closer to 37. I definitely don't have everything mapped out exactly the way it probably should be on this map. But again, until I get very, very clear, defined lines of where stuff is, I'm just going to leave it as a general area of control. And this is pretty, it's probably a little lacking in some of the upper reaches, but I just don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to maintain logistics out here. So a lot of this is gray zone. And then this is more the area of control for the Ukrainians across the Kursk border. A lot going on up here. We're going to get into this today. I just wanted to talk about the actual updates and why I'm not updating it so frantically like I do some of the other parts of the line. Like if the Ukrainians were to advance or the Russians were to advance in the east, right? Those lines are so stable that it's very easy to actually map where the Russian advances. We have geolocations. With this, first off, there are a number of fakes. The Ukrainians posted a picture today that they had made it to the outside of Legrov up here, where the nuclear power plant is. That is it's a big deal because the Russians obviously don't want the Ukrainians to reach the nuclear power plant and this E38 highway, which is a logistics line for the Russians in Russia proper. So they do not want this road to get cut. But there was a fake photo of Ukrainians somewhere outside of Lgov, but next to a road sign. That road sign was edited and not real. So there's plenty of fakes going on. There are also plenty of what I would consider propaganda victories that really are disasters. So we did have a Ukrainian BTR group, some sort of spearhead that pushed towards Giri. Some of these names I don't know how to pronounce. I haven't really looked at this part of the map super in depth, but the Ukrainians had made it into here. A BTR-4 was spotted in this area. I believe they basically came down this road where they were then ambushed. The Ukrainians have suffered heavy losses in armor, specifically the BTR-4. Yesterday, it was like a massacre. I think we saw like 6 or 7 BTR-4s get destroyed, which also indicates that the Ukrainians, this is a high-tier grouping that has been sent into Kursk. The equipment that they're utilizing and the actual units. This is not Joe Schmo territorial defense guys that just got picked up and thrown in. Now, these are qualified brigades, and in my personal opinion, they're being completely wasted in this region. Okay. All right, moving down to the actual updates that we know about for sure. I'm going to start in the Pokrovsk section because this is becoming a major issue for Ukraine. This is becoming a very, very big deal. You can see now that Avdiivka is so far in the back now. I doubt it's even getting hit by much artillery. You can see the distance is roughly like 30-ish kilometers. So, things are getting drastically worse and they're accelerating on this front. And I've been talking about this since April. As soon as progress started around Avdiivka, and then after Avdiivka, they started pushing out even further and focusing on this front, I knew that Pokrovsk was going to be the goal. The defenses behind Avdiivka are not nearly as strong, and the defenses that they are in now are even weaker. They've been hastily built. I can actually bring up those defense lines for you guys. You can see here the Russians have gotten behind this defense line, which is going to compromise this whole series and this reservoir area. We can probably expect fast Russian movement in this area soon, especially as the Russians progress into Horivka and into Minhorod and Pokrovsk. So this most recent update, actually, as I talked about in the last episode, the Russians had advanced into Horivka, and that completely, this advance right here, this little progression up these tree lines and reservoirs completely destroys the rear guard of this fortified line. So this is one of the last major fortified lines before the Russians reach Pokrovsk. In terms of actual fortifications and stuff, you can see here we have a couple of like trench lines, but no major fortifications, just individual lines of defense here. So the fortifications, you can see how dense they are on this side of the map. Back here, they are not as dense. And I just updated this very recently with the most updated information we have on Ukrainian defense lines. So this is going to deteriorate very quickly, and Ukraine is going to be they're going to be hurting very bad for the Ukrainian brigades that were sent into Kursk, right? And then it wasn't just new Ukrainian brigades that were being developed or refitted and built up. These were not all new brigades. There was a battalion of, I believe, an air assault brigade that was in Chasiv Yar. That air assault brigade was removed and transferred to Kursk, where I believe now they are requesting rotation because they have lost combat capability due to the number of losses that they have. The armor losses in this region are just atrocious, guys. Landsets, there's no short range air defense in this region. We saw Tunguska that was committed, again, a high level asset in the Kursk region, get destroyed. These are irreplaceable assets that the Ukrainians are using in and losing in Kursk. Meanwhile, their actual defense lines here are just collapsing. You can see the progression is speeding up along this front, and the updates now are becoming bigger and more dramatic. Soon, the Russians will capture Horivka. This is not a very defensible town. It's on the lowland. The Russians have the high ground over here almost completely. I was going to take you guys over to the topographical map and show you that actually real quick. All right. Okay. So here's Horivka. Here you can see the Russian line has just entered into Horivka, but you can see how this whole settlement, most of the settlements in Ukraine, in fact, are running along creeks or rivers in the low ground. So the Russians are in a very advantageous position here. They want to keep pushing up into this area and then pressure the Pokrovsk Konstantinivka road and this ring road. But yeah, you can see how the Ukrainian position in these villages is going to become untenable very, very quick with the Russian high ground dominance, even down here in Zeleny. And then live UA map is actually showing that the Russians have progressed along down into here. So even more progress from the Russians on the live UA map. The situation is just deteriorating. It's going to continue to deteriorate. And I think the Russians could very easily be in Pokrovsk by October. The way that they're progressing right now and the lack of stability from the AFU in this region, it's panning out to be an actual collapse. I say collapse a lot, and I get a lot of shit for it. People are like, "Oh, it's a collapse," but they only advance like a couple kilometers or whatever. There are tactical collapses where you have collapses of a tactical nature where a very important position is lost or something because of individual mistakes on the battlefield, and then you have strategic collapses where you're losing whole swaths of land and you're actually seriously getting routed and stuff, and that's more of a strategic collapse. And most of this war is of a tactical nature 90% of the time, right? We haven't seen a lot of large scale combined arms movements for a very, very long time. So it's probably like 2023 when the Ukrainians tried it. But even then they half-assed it because that war style of warfare doesn't really work unless you're shit kicking somebody and you have 80 coverage and air superiority and that sort of stuff. Okay. Appreciate you too, Danny. I'm glad you were able to make it today. I'm just looking at the chat real fast. All right, let's get back into the map. Okay, so massive, massive advancements. The Russians have entered Horodivka officially, and this town is not going to hold. Like I said, it's a very, very underdeveloped town in terms of defenses. Most of these buildings are probably completely leveled by glide bombs. Is that a bell? That looks inappropriate. And once the Russians get in here, this is going to become the next Orshitny for the Russians in terms of having a staging area to then launch offensive operations into. Holy cow! Miroli Ubutivka. Holy cow! Mykolivka and Mihnorod. So get ready for a lot of advancements, and then a strong push also south from once this fortification is captured into Zurivka, and then down here into Novohodrivka. This should be the goal, and you can see how the Russians. I mean, it's easier to see when you're doing the mapping like I am, but the Russians continuously move through the weakest areas of the Ukrainian defense lines. They're kind of it's kind of Swiss cheese at this point, and they don't have to engage the Ukrainian fortifications necessarily directly. They're bypassing them, getting around them, like we saw here, and then collapsing them. Okay. All right, moving up to the New York Toretsk salient. We have a small Russian advance, just widening the flank over here. Closing in on Panteleymonivka. My God, dude. And then over here, we have the gut that I had talked about. It was purple. If you guys remember, it looked like this. And it was unconfirmed Russian advance at the end of my last live stream. Immediately after the live stream, we came back, or I came back to the map, and this update had come out from Deep State, confirming that the Ukrainians had retreated from this area. Like I had mentioned earlier, expect now that this has collapsed, that the front line will level out along this road and towards Nevelpivka. So something like that. And when you get something like that, something actually like this, let's see, let me make it bigger. When we get a line, a front line that starts to look something like this right here, you can see how, let me change this color. It's bad color. Not very visible. Okay. When you get a front line like this, you can see how Toretsk becomes, it gets put in such a bad position. It has some dedicated high grounds, but it's on the low ground for the most part. And with the Russian advances around the region, the situation is going to become more and more difficult, especially as the Russians begin to approach Tepochki and Konstantinivka from the Klishchivka area, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Okay, I'm going to delete this. Over here, we have a small Russian advance actually into Toretsk. The Battle of Toretsk has officially began. This was confirmed that the Russians had made it into the first set of high-rise buildings in Toretsk. And now we can see that this encirclement is developing over here. I don't know what the Ukrainian force concentration is in this area. I imagine it's getting close to next to nothing. Running logistics through this area would be very difficult. And then over here in Druzhba, the Russians have just made a slight frontline advance, just advancing the entire front line, progressing. I expect an update here probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. All right, moving up to Klishchivka. The Russians have pushed out, and as we can see, have captured this fortified area completely. They had captured some of this side of it, but now they have captured this entire area and have captured the height right here, which is of vital importance. It is the commanding height all around this entire area. If you guys remember when Wagner actually made it onto that height, this entire side of the canal collapsed. So just be on the lookout. The Russians now have the high ground. They're going to be looking down, and the Ukrainians will probably have to retreat out of the salient. The Ukrainians fought desperately for like, how long? It was 2023 when they got it back, and they survived through this whole entire push here. Avdiivka collapsed during that time. Vovchansk has happened, like Kharkov has happened, and the Russians have been just fighting for this little hill the entire time, and the Ukrainians have been throwing manpower and reserves at it endlessly, trying to hold it. And what I actually think happened is it's either the 82nd or 80th Air Assault Brigade was transferred from. My camera went out. Hold on just a second, guys. It's coming back. All right, there we go. I'm back. Okay. Let's see. So the brigade was removed from this territory, from Chasiv Yar and sent up to Kursk. So this right here, this loss of territory, this vital, it's almost strategic to this entire front, because now that this is lost, the Russians will be able to push out and approach the canal, which sets the Ukrainians way far back. And then they're going to be able to cross the canal and start putting pressure on the rear lines of the Toretsk front. And I'm telling you guys, we could very, very quickly see this entire pocket up to this 0504 highway just collapse. And then the new front line will become Konstantinivka. I think it could happen much, much, much quicker than everybody expects, especially considering that the Ukrainians just committed into Kursk, and now the entire eastern flank is in a very, very tough position in terms of available reserves. So it's getting worse quicker for sure. Okay. And then we have one more small update. Just west of Tabivka, the Russians are just expanding this spearhead heading towards the Oskal River. This situation is becoming more and more dangerous for this Ukrainian garrison. I'm telling you guys, we could be looking at one big retreat here, another big retreat out of Toretsk soon. And then who knows what's going to happen over here. If the Russians break out over here, I mean, the Ukrainians do not have defenses back here. So if something happens and there's an actual collapse in this area, it could end up spiraling out of control, where the Russians get up very mobile back in behind the Ukrainian lines and start getting up here towards Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. Remember what I said. Pokrovsk is the Izum of the south. I mean, they're almost equidistant from this defense line. They connect to all of the same roads. And once this is cut, this is going to become a much, much more difficult area to defend. I think the Ukrainians fully understand this. I think the Ukrainian government and military have made a decision that they are going to move from a symmetrical battle to an asymmetrical battle, where they do not have to take equal fights with the Russians. They have been losing equal fights with the Russians the entire war. And the only time the Ukrainians have had any battlefield success is where they use asymmetrical means to force the Russians out of areas. Asymmetrical meaning the Ukrainians load up a front with way, way more force concentration than the Russians have and just kind of rout them out of an area, even though they don't have control necessarily over the entire battlefield. If they could hold the line everywhere in a symmetrical manner, they absolutely would. This Kursk operation would not be going on, because we saw the Ukrainians get ground in here for a year. They have no problem sitting in trenches and fighting and holding the line forever. That's not the issue. The issue is they can't do that anymore because they don't have the forces available, at least to maintain it. They had to make a decision. It was getting to the crunch time. Do we go for a Hail Mary, or do we keep just running it up the middle until the clock runs out? Right. Those are the two options. And I guess they went with the option which they deemed most probable to actually affect the battlefield and potentially cause change, which was this incursion. So that's the situation we're at. But really, when it comes to this Kursk operation, I'm just going to talk about it for a second, because it's starting to get out of hand. The way people, especially in the pro-Ukrainian information space, are approaching this. I talked about it last time. I think the problems that the Ukrainian military have and have had did not just go away because something exciting happens. I don't understand how people are so easily fooled and manipulated by confirmation bias and propaganda that makes you happy, because there's still the realism and there's still the actual mathematics that are involved, where Ukraine does not have enough men. They're not mobilizing well enough. They're not going into full mobilization because they refuse to do it. And they just, the math isn't there, right? They're not going to win. It's so easy to predict what is going to happen in this conflict. And the reason why I've been slightly accurate in some of my predictions over the past, especially year and a half, is I'm just betting with the odds. If I think the Ukrainians have the odds of doing something, I go with the Ukrainians. If I think the Russians have the odds of doing something, I go with them. It's very simple. It's not like I'm not making like harrowing predictions or anything. It's just logical. And this whole operation up here into Kursk has just been illogical. They got nowhere near, at least so far. I do believe that they are now running out of steam. We are entering into day 10. It's hard to keep aggressive offensives like that going, especially when you don't have unlimited manpower. That, who knows, they may bring in more manpower and try to express this more. But the Russians have easy logistics. They have, I mean, they can, stage in Kursk. They can stage in all of these towns, move down. The Ukrainians are not putting very much pressure back here at all. Most of the pressure is coming in the form of very quick DRGs that are getting in behind Russian lines. And then usually getting destroyed. So a lot of delusion going on here, a lot of just incorrect analysis. Apparently, though, from people that I've been talking to that know people in Ukraine and in the Ukrainian military, they say that morale is up in Ukraine because of this, at least the civilian population. The propaganda is hitting hard. They think they're winning. So mission accomplished. If that is how you think victory will be achieved, I don't think victory is going to be achieved like that, because once the hit from this high goes away, all of those addicts, right? All of the addicts online and everybody in Ukraine who's dying for good news and information, we're going to go right back to what the last 4 months were, right? This is going to stabilize. Who knows? They might hold it. I don't even see the benefit in holding this. There's no strategic objective in this area. There's nothing. They just created a new front that's going to just suck resources from everywhere around the map when they're already the smaller adversary that has less resources to begin with. It makes no sense. They did not reach the nuclear power plant for leverage. They did not reach the E-38 to cut supply. They didn't do anything that they needed to do. And I would be admitting, I mean, this operation went just about as successfully as it possibly could for the Ukrainians. This was like I said, this is a Hail Mary throw at the end of the game when you're a D2 team playing against a top SEC team. So, that's what's going on here. It was never going to work. And even when they had this massive surprise, which I've been hearing a lot of people saying that this wasn't actually as much of a surprise. The actual potential start date might have caught the Russians off guard, and the location of where it was going in. But a couple of people that are in the actual Sumy region had been talking about for weeks how Russian strikes had increased here multiple times over. And I had been reporting on constant ballistic missile and Garand strikes. A lot of people were under the impression that the Russians were going to go into the Sumy region because of all of this activity, when now we understand that the reason for all of this activity is because there was such a target-rich environment. They say that the MOD ignored it, but again, I mean, from a pro-Ukrainian standpoint and from a pro-Western standpoint, I hear a lot of this. Oh, it's so embarrassing that this happened. You see it in the media. They're talking about it a lot. This is embarrassing. This. At the end of the day, what is going to matter? It's how the war ends, right? And if this accelerates the end of the war, it's not a good look. You're not protecting your border, but you're in an active war. Putin just got up and said in the most recent speech he made that there's no reason to negotiate with Kiev now. Negotiations are off. The war is going to end by military means. That's almost exactly what he said. There's no purpose in negotiating. They don't keep their word. They were threatened multiple times. If they did more incursions into Russia, they were going to lose more territory. A sanitation zone was going to be created. And basically what I'm saying right now is after this, Ukraine could have got away with the 4 oblasts. That deal is off the table. That deal that Putin gave in the summer, that when I told you guys it was the best deal that Ukraine was going to get. That deal is gone. That's not happening anymore. Right? There's not going to be negotiations now. And now the Ukrainians have probably lost Chernigov, Sumy, and Kharkov. Probably everything on this side of the river, because once you're there, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to not. Ukraine just signed their death warrant, or their death paperwork. What do you call that? Death certificate. There we go. That's what Ukraine just did through this. And I think that is exactly what the West wants. The West does not want to have to support Ukraine and keep Ukraine afloat. They would rather see Ukraine destroyed. This is why I say I'm more pro-Ukrainian than actual pro-Ukrainians, because the only thing pro-Ukrainians want is to see the complete destruction, both demographically, territorially, everything. They want to see Ukraine destroyed, but they just virtue signal and pretend like they're doing something good for Ukraine. They don't care. Nobody cares. The only people who care about the Ukrainians are the people who are like not angry pro-Russians, basically. Like angry pro-Russians don't like Ukrainians. More of like the neutral crowd is the actual pro-Ukrainian crowd. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so those are the map updates. That's what's going on. Lots of missile strikes, lots of footage. I'm going to cover all of that in my demonetized episode. And like I said, it's going to be a very, very long one. I'm going to try to get some pals on, maybe Zag and Clown, but who knows? Maybe I'll have Alex on, because Alex is pretty good with weapons and stuff. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. If you guys have some questions, go ahead and get some questions in. I'm going to go over to the chat now. Let's see. Question for you. Do not tell me you are not Putin. Why is Kiev still standing? Why is he still giving speeches? What's going on? Well, first off, you got to remember that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, right? If the Russians are comfortably enjoying winning the war at their pace, and they're comfortable with where their economy is at, and they're comfortable with where their foreign relations is at, why break something why break something up that isn't broken, right? Why fix something if it's not even damaged? And like I said, this is part of the propaganda aspect of all of this. Is when when the Ukrainians go in and they get some territory in Kursk, everybody is like very excited. But again, no objectives are being reached here. If Ukraine was securing the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, that's an objective. If they were pushing the Russians out of Kharkov, that's an objective. If they reached this highway or reached the NPP, that's an objective, right? If they reach Kursk, that's an objective. But with the force concentration the Ukrainians have, they do not have the ability to do that. The Russians have more forces in this region now. The Ukrainians are going to get pushed out of here if the Russians want to push them out. Honestly, you could just play into the Ukrainian way of thinking and just let this stay and let them keep pulling units and keep this festering wound open that Ukraine has to keep feeding into your territory. It just makes it makes no sense. None of this makes sense, unless they were really hoping that they were going to cause some massive breakthroughs and a lot of problems and actually be able to pull reserves from this area. But the Russians just have a lot of mobile reserves now, so it's not going to work out. Putin is giving speeches because that's what leaders do. He's not a military leader. He's not in charge of the MOD. I guess he could technically order strikes, but I'm sure he listens to his Ministry of Defense, who say Zelensky and crew are absolutely retarded. They're pushing into Kursk right now with their reserves that could be defending the fortifications in the east. Why would I execute the idiot in charge when it's serving my national interests? Why would I do that? Why would I put somebody more capable in that position potentially? Why would I put somebody into that position who might negotiate and I would get a worse deal for my country? right? Or who knows what the Russians are thinking? The Russians may be thinking we're headed to war, right? We're headed to a World War III, whether it's in the Middle East or whatever. The world is so hot. Everybody seems like they're ready to go, gearing up for it. Why would I change the calculus right now when I can keep things steady, keep preparing, and focus on victory in the end and not victory right now? You guys got to be a little bit more logical in your thinking and a little bit more forward thinking. You have to think in decades. Don't think in months, because nobody's going to remember the Kursk incursion. Nobody's going to remember it. Nobody's going to talk about it in 5 years, are they? Especially if Russia gets a huge chunk of Ukraine. Actually, we might be talking about it. We might be saying, remember how stupid that Kursk operation was? Ukraine lost half of their country because of that operation. Not necessarily just because of that, but that was the catalyst that started the collapse that led to whatever we're going to see in 5 years, right? So you just have to think a little bit more ahead, and you have to think about every interwinding aspect of every decision you make. If I execute Zelensky, what if Budanov replaces him? Budanov is the CIA's guy. He's going to do exactly what the CIA does. He might be hyper aggressive. He might get a ton more Russian civilians killed. And I might have to do something that I'm not prepared to do because I don't want to ruin my relations with Saudi Arabia, with Brazil, with all of these other countries that I'm building an economic union with, right? There's so much going on. And you guys have to really step back and look at this in a geostrategic manner. It's not this. It's not this. This will not be remembered. People don't remember every individual aspect of World War II. They remember some big battles, but we wrote all the history too. So, think about all of the things that the Germans did that were just kind of went unnoticed, right? That is this, right? This is just a small part of the war. This should not impact this, right? You should not let that little blue speck right here. You can't even see it from out here. You gotta look at it as a small blue dot, right? It's not the small incursion into Kursk. Oh, we need to respond. We need to retaliate. We need to destroy Ukraine. Decapitation strikes, this, that, and the other. Because that action, that reaction that you have to their action, it could have an escalatory and opposite reaction that you're not wanting to deal with. Make sense? Good. You can still see the red, though. That is true. That's funny. All right. Questions if you guys got them. I'm going to scroll through and look. If Zeleny is fully captured now, I can't tell if the forest area is part of Zeleny or Toretsk. Let's see. Yes, it is. It is completely captured. The township is, at least. I mean, maybe this area you might consider, but I don't know. It's kind of in between. I would say yes. I would say at least a majority. You could consider this Toretsk. You could consider this. It just depends on where the dividing line is. I'm not sure, but at least 99%, if not 100%. Yeah. Why knock off Belinsky when he is a gift to Russia? Answer: because people will ask why Russia hasn't knocked him off. Russia looks weak. Again, who cares? Yeah, this is like an emotional response to a cold, bloody war. Don't get emotional. What is weakness? Weakness is just something perceived, right? Let them think you're weak. Let them try to take advantage of you, and then you actually do something, right? Like it does. Like when you grow up in America and you grow up in the empire, in the hegemony, and with our culture specifically. Not saying you're from America, but in the West, it is like this too. It's aggression, 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 force, 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 force. That's what it is, and it's very emotional. And we think week to week. I'm not even joking. We think week to week, month to month. We don't think years. We don't think decades. That's why everybody makes fun of the Chinese, but the Chinese think in literally centuries. They're planning their legacy, whereas we're trying to maintain our hegemony. Like that's the difference, right? And so when you say because they look weak to who? The United States? They're enemies. Who cares how they look to each other? Who cares? Everybody who is in a geopolitical position of power, every foreign minister, every president, every prime minister, every dictator can look at this and go, wow, Russia is literally standing up to the hegemony right now through a proxy war in Ukraine. They're winning. They're obviously winning. They survived sanctions, right? Putin has, throughout this entire time, been egged into steep escalation, right? They struck the nuclear triad. They've invaded the country multiple times. They've been trying to escalate. They strike very sensitive targets in Crimea. They shell civilians in Belgorod. They do very inflammatory things all the time. And Russia sits here, takes it, and continues their foreign policy and looks towards victory, right? How is that weakness? I don't get this weakness thing. You guys just want a hasty reaction that probably escalates and doesn't do anything positive for Russia. That's what you guys want. And what that entails is weakness. That is weakness. When I see Israel go and escalate, it's because I know that Israel is not in control. Israel needs to control the situation through escalation dominance. They have to assassinate high-level people. They have to scare the countries around them because they are weak. Their economy is weak. Their domestic situation is weak. They are a weak little country. They're just supported by one of the best militaries in the world, or the best military in the world, I guess you would say, right? In terms of what they need in the region, which is air support. They have it. So every time I see Israel escalate like that, strike Iran, and people say the same thing about Iran. Oh, Iran's weak. Iran is a not so stable place, right? Just in general, they just had elections. If you strike Israel and you start a regional war, there's a chance that a lot of people in your country die. There's a chance that Israel uses nukes. There's a chance that it escalates to a point where your regime is destroyed, right? The Iranian dream is destroyed. You guys have to think about the consequences of action sometimes. You can't just react. It can't just be a reaction all the time. Let's see. Lindsey Graham boasted that there should be search and given recruitment for old pilots in NATO. Yeah, he said that forever ago. He's got a lot of investment in this, and it's going to make him look very bad. He was the one saying best money we ever spent killing Russians. And when Ukraine loses, it's going to make him look very bad. Good news is he's about dead, so it doesn't really matter. But he'll still be in Congress or Senate for the next 10 years. Lindsey Graham, I can't remember if he's a senator or a congressman. He works on control. Let's see. Kalibrated. If you were in charge after Donetsk was secured, would you go in direction to Kursk from behind Ukrainian incursion or in a direction of Transnistria? Neither. I wouldn't worry about either of those. I would secure the east, and then I would break into this open territory right here. And I would just force the Ukrainians to retreat out of every area that they hold. They're going to have to retreat out of Kharkov or get surrounded. They'll have to retreat out of the whole Kharkov region. They'll have to retreat basically back to Pokrovsk because there's just nothing here. There's not even roads. There's nothing. So once the Russians break through this and they use this as the launch off point, they should move very quickly into this area. That's what I would do. I've said the entire war, I don't think we're going to see any fighting over here for a very, very, very long time, if ever. I think realistically, if the Russians do end up getting Odessa, which I'm not saying is going to happen, I don't think it would come with a fight. I think that the Russians will walk in and take what they want once the Ukrainian army over here is destroyed. I mean, we're already seeing it happen. The Ukrainians are going to defend every inch until they can defend no inches. That's what's going to happen. More importantly, I think moving to Transnistria is more important. So if I had to choose one, coming in through the north and securing some of this, or moving down here, I'd move down here. If I had the option and both could work out. You already asked that. Scott, it is this Kursk. Wait, Mennonites are winning the propaganda war by miles for 99% of the population. That is all that matters. Wake up. Winning the propaganda war? You know who else won the propaganda war? The Germans. What? What are you talking about? Propaganda wars don't win wars. They can sustain morale, but you know what happens when you lie to your people and you continuously lie to your people? They start to figure it out. And I'm telling you that after this Kursk operation, the Ukrainian population is going to have it figured out. They're going to realize that this was stupid. The Ukrainian military is going to realize that they just lost the East that they'd just been dying for 2.5 years for no good reason. Literally for no objective gained in Kursk. So no, propaganda is not what is most important. And I don't care about 99.9% of the idiots on the planet who think that think propaganda reflects reality. I care about reality. I care about who's going to win. I care about how this is actually going to go. I don't care about narratives. They always collapse. They always collapse. We've seen it time and time again throughout this war. And sure, the Russians should have a better propaganda game, and they should be controlling everything and this, that, and the other, of course. But that's not how the world works. So I would imagine the Ukrainians don't plan to withdraw from Vuhledar, even if the road is cut to the city. The Russians will have to kick them out at some point. Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to retreat or just be destroyed. Like that's the option. Like once the Russians push back into Vadyan, they're going to have to leave. But yeah, they're going to fight tooth and nail for as long as they can, like they always do. And that's what I'm saying. It's going to be they defend every inch until they can defend no inch. Seriously, no one get emotional. This should be, I mean, you can get emotional. I get emotional sometimes on here because I think it's funny. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? But don't get emotional when you're doing analysis. Try to remove your bias and promote things that might not make you happy. And this is, I know it's like a pretty obvious thing, but people love to just ride confirmation bias and just believe whatever. It's why David has like 130,000 followers. That dude's an idiot and he's been wrong time and time again. But, you know, people like to hear what they like to hear. Brave young Russians are dying because it's an SMO, not a war. If he upgrades it to a war, it doesn't change anything. Again, you're talking about decapitating the Ukrainian government. What happens if more young Russians die because of that? What happens if a lot of young Russians die? What happens if it escalates into a world war and then so many Russians die that the Russian culture and you know country just dies? Like there are consequences for actions. So yeah, turn it into a war. Sure, start calling it a war. Guess what changes? Nothing. The Russians are using every means they have available to them besides, I mean, wiping the Ukrainian population, which, again, does not benefit Russia. Russia wants to control this territory now. They don't want the population to hate them because they destroyed their entire livelihoods, right? They don't want that. That's not what you want to come into. There are consequences for your actions and vibes. I know you're emotional, and I get it. You don't want to see people dying, but guess what? That's why we don't fight wars. And when we do fight wars, you have to accept that people are going to die, especially young boys. Oh, wait. I already read that one. Which falls first, Pokrovsk or Kursk? Oh, man, that's hard. I think the Ukrainians are going to fight very, very hard to maintain Kursk. They've invested so much. So I don't know if Pokrovsk is going to collapse first, though, because this could be like a couple months of battling in here through this urban conglomerate. But I don't know. I don't know, man. That's a good question. I would probably say Kursk just because logistics is so much more difficult. Hey, Scott, why are so many of the pro-RU people so neurotic and constantly doom and cry? Well, first off, in my personal experience, actual Russians are the most like they were beat down, dude. After the collapse of the end of the Soviet Union, the collapse of the Soviet Union, all the economic stuff that came after that, the Russians seem beat to shit. Now they're starting. There we go. There's this constant crying and like making things so much worse than they are. And we saw it with the Kursk operation. The second things started to go bad, like looked bad, that there was that surrender at the checkpoint and everything. People started freaking out, and the Z information space actually boosted all of the Ukrainian propaganda with their doom. And I was just sitting back like, guys, you want to give it like a week? Like, do you want to give it a week? Because people thought the Russians were going to reach Kharkov, right? When they busted through and they made that breakthrough. And I was like, guys, no, they don't have the force concentration. That's not the goal here. It would take 1 million men to take Kharkov right now. They don't want to do that. 100,000, whatever, not 1 million, but a lot of men that they don't want to expend in that way. It's stupid, pointless. And I was like, they're just going to push in and force Ukraine to rotate reserves, and then progress in the east is going to start up again. And that's exactly what happened, right? And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what the Ukrainians were trying to do. But the pro-RU information space just started dooming on this and just made it so much worse. Especially like when they were reaching out here, people were like, "Oh no, it's collapsing," and it's like, no, but it's a very empty space. Like if you look at these towns, it's a couple roads. I mean, it's like 100 people, 200 people, very small towns. They've all been evacuated, so there's no population or not very much population in them. This is the only more major town, but even then, this is very small. This is like Hordivka. This is like Hordivka that the Russians are moving into, or Vovchansk. Vovchansk is actually more developed than those, so it offers much better defense. I mean, all these high-rise buildings and everything, and it's much more dense. But this was just. It was a smart move by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians do know how to do one thing very well, and that is propaganda. They control the narrative, they control the information space, and I would actually love for a government agency to hire me, not the Russians, but I just think I would be really, really good at that sect of work. I think that like not narrative control, but I guess just like a legitimate propagandist is what you would end up being. I just think that I would be talented at that. I don't know if I'd want to do it. I'd have some moral qualms about it, but that I think I would be good at delivering information and staying on narrative. I feel like I do a pretty good job of that in my day-to-day posting and stuff. My narrative, by the way, not a narrative, my narrative, what I think is happening in the country. Not what the Russians think, not what the Ukrainians think, my narrative. The English language sucks. I have to fucking specify that. All right. Let me see a couple more questions here. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the stream. If you would not mind subscribing, if you have not, and just leaving a like, it helps a lot, guys. It helps me with the algorithm. A comment also really helps. Just put A. But I really do appreciate all of you in here today. I'm looking for some more questions here. If I miss you guys, I'm sorry. Here we have this. Too funny. The equipment failure meltdown in the open. Any chance we can get outtake videos of all of these on Patreon? Are you talking about my demonetized episode? Yeah, because you're going to see. Here's my contribution for future equipment upgrades. Okay. I think you're just talking about the demonetized. Yeah, we're going to see a. In the opener. Yeah, so at the beginning of the Kursk operation, or in the Kursk operation, yeah, we're gonna see a lot of it. I think that's what you're talking about. If it's not, just leave another comment and I'll see it. Dude, buy a mini jack connection. No, dude. We keep that shit muted. That's how we do it. That's how we do it, dude. I don't care. All right. Let's see. A couple more questions here. Question. My granddad won the Iron Cross in the Battle of Kursk fighting commies. I wear his medals every day. And next day, in this honor, he used to talk about gypsies and commies a lot when he got drunk. Hey. That's funny. Last question here. Will Ukraine ever come to the negotiating table and listen to the calm voice of reason? Yeah, I think that they would, but I think that that ship has sailed. So they're even if they would come to the negotiating table, they're not. They're not gonna. There's not gonna be a table to negotiate at. So yeah. I'll do another one because I just saw another question. We got Z German in here. Question. It's super convenient for the Russians to let Ukrainian SF to roam around the countryside instead of storming their bunkers. Yeah, I mean, offensive operations are always more costly. We can see that the Ukrainians are taking heavy equipment losses, especially they're losing so many armored vehicles in this area to Lancets because they just have no air defense. So yeah, it is much more beneficial for Ukrainian raids on the Kinburn split down here that end in disaster. Ukrainian incursions that end in disaster. Oh, I actually forgot to. That's so annoying. At least it's not completely freezing now. It's getting better. I can fix it really quick, but I need to figure this out. All right. Let's see. Yeah, so it is much more beneficial for the Ukrainians to be on the offensive, and this is what I talked about. Is this is just not helping anything. It's just burning the candle at both ends. This is just speeding up the collapse. Okay. Negotiating desk. Yeah, there won't be a table. There'll be a small. It's like a nightstand, the negotiating nightstand. Zelensky has to sit there. It's really big. Like imagine me sitting at a little desk like that. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to wrap it up today. Thank you for the hour live stream. I appreciate you all so much. I don't know if I'm going to be on here tomorrow for a live stream. Depends on the news. If there's a bunch of news, I'm coming on here and talking. If there's no news, I'm going to make that demonetized video later today, and that'll be up tomorrow. And I'm going to actually record another video. So there will be content out tomorrow for sure. I don't know if there will be a live stream, but thank you guys so much. I appreciate you so much. I really enjoy doing this. It's a lot of fun. It's like the best part of my day. So I love coming on here and talking to you guys. Please be safe, take care, and enjoy your lives. Go be happy. Don't be sad. Life is good. Remember, here's the quote of the day. Depression is dwelling in the past. Anxiety is hyper-focusing on the future that you can't control. And happiness is living in the present. All right, guys, be safe. Take care.